Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the rule and the underlying legislation. This rule provides for consideration of two bills dealing with Iran and its continued support of international terrorism. In addition, the rule makes in order all submitted amendments. These bills were the subject of hearings in the Financial Services Committee and were marked up and reported favorably to the House. Both bills received bipartisan support in the committee, and I would expect that we will see significant bipartisan support on the House floor. Mr. Speaker, it is no secret that Iran's leaders are a threat to our way of life. We don't have to look any further than Iranian support for lethal attacks on U.S. troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, particularly through IEDs, to witness Iran's hostility towards us. Going back several decades, Iran has routinely terrorized the Middle East and has sought to export terror worldwide. Iran's numerous threats to annihilate our friend and ally Israel are a steady drumbeat that should continuously remind us of Iran's threat. In 2001, the Ayatollah Khomeini is quoted as saying, "It is the mission of the Islamic Republic of Iran to erase Israel from the map of the region." In 2002, a leader of Hezbollah, which is a known extension of the Iranian regime, said, "If Jews all gather in Israel, it will save us the trouble of going after them worldwide." But lest we think these are the views of the past, the Ayatollah was quoted in 2014 saying, "This regime of Israel has no cure but to be annihilated." And we could go on. The evidence of Iran's intent on the destruction of Israel is nearly endless. Just yesterday, the commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards offered to support Palestinians if they choose to stage an armed uprising to take by force Israel's newly recognized capital, Jerusalem. Any country whose leaders actively support terrorism against Israel and whose leaders take an official position that the nation of Israel should be eliminated from the earth are and always must be sworn enemy of the United States. But it's not just Israel. Other Middle East allies of the United States have been the target of Iran's hostility as well. Namely, Saudi Arabia has been increasingly threatened by the Iranian regime. In 2011, our FBI and DEA agents successfully disrupted a plot by Iran to assassinate the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the U.S. here in Washington, D.C. The uncovered plot included bombing a restaurant in D.C. at which the Saudi ambassador was planning to eat. The bombing would almost certainly have killed innocent Americans as well. The list could go on. Iran has fomented unrest in Iraq, has sought to subject Sunni Muslims to Shiite militias, has supplied the Syrian regime in its years-long civil war, has supported Hezbollah and Hamas, has flagrantly disregarded international law by building a nuclear program, and has taunted the United States. Who can forget the image of U.S. Navy sailors, hands behind their heads, forced to kneel under gunpoint on an Iranian military vessel? Or the thinly veiled attacks on U.S. troops in Iraq using proxy militant groups, or the numerous incidents in the Persian Gulf involving the harassment of the U.S. Navy. But yet, against this backdrop, the United States entered into an agreement with Iran. The agreement, commonly referred to as the Iran deal, was opposed by a bipartisan majority in the House. It relaxed sanctions on Iran, opened channels for business investment, and allowed Iran a pathway forward on a nuclear bomb. Further, while having the impact of a treaty between two nations, the Obama administration chose to call the agreement by another name, and in so doing bypassed the United States Senate. This political commitment by President Obama to Iran is the reason for these two bills today. The first bill, H.R. 1638, the Iranian Leadership Asset Transparency Act, targets the finances of Iran's ruling class. Its goal is threefold. One, aid U.S. authorities in their efforts to eliminate money laundering by the Iranian regime. Two, expose the sectors of the Iranian economy that are controlled by Iran's rulers. And three, show the Iranian people how their corrupt government accumulates wealth for itself at the expense of the people. The Iran deal removes sanctions on many of the known corrupt government entities. This bill will provide the transparency necessary to reveal the level of corruption within Iran and to inform Congress and others about how to combat the flow of money to terrorists. It further exposes the ruling class by publishing this information in the most common languages spoken within Iran. The second bill that would be considered under this rule is H.R. 4324, the Strengthening Oversight of Iran's Access to Finance Act. This bill will instruct the Treasury Department to report on transactions of financial institutions related to the export of aircraft to Iran. Under the Iran deal, President Obama removed restrictions on the sale of American aircraft to Iran. In 2016, the Treasury Department authorized the export of more than 200 aircraft to Iran Air, Iran's state-owned air carrier. But yet we know that Iran Air has been the transporter of choice for Iran's Revolutionary Guards as they have ferried weapons systems around the Middle East. The absurdity of this deal to increase the Revolutionary Guards' capacity to move weapons is self-evident. The bill before us today will require certification by financiers of the aircraft exportation deals that none of the aircraft exported will be used for terrorism or Iran's weapons of mass destruction program. Due to Iran Air's continued role in transporting materials used for terrorism, this one step that we should take to help hold lending institutions accountable for their support of aircraft exports to Iran. Mr. Speaker, many of us in Congress know how bad the Iran deal was for our security and our allies' security. That is why there was bipartisan opposition to the deal last Congress. While in the end we were unsuccessful in prevailing upon the administration to abandon its bad idea, we should continue to stand in the gap against Iran's ongoing efforts to undermine peace in the Middle East and destroy our friends and ultimately the United States. Today we have two bills that will help our ongoing efforts to thwart Iran's terrorist ambitions. I urge my colleagues to support